New details have emerged on how the American Psychological Association, the world's largest group of psychologists, aided government-sanctioned torture under President George W. Bush. A group of dissident psychologists have just published a 60-page report alleging the APA secretly coordinated with officials from the CIA, White House, and the Pentagon to change the APA ethics policy to align it with the operational needs of the CIA's torture program. The report also reveals a behavioral science researcher working for President Bush secretly drafted language that the APA inserted into its ethics policy on interrogations. Much of the report is based on hundreds of newly released internal APA emails from 2003 to 2006 that show top officials were in direct communication with the CIA. In 2004, for example, the APA secretly took part in a meeting with officials from the CIA and other intelligence agencies to discuss ethics and national security. In one email, the APA stated that the aim of the meeting was, quote, to take a forward-looking, positive approach in which we convey a sensitivity to and appreciation of the important work mental health professionals are doing in the national security arena, and in a supportive way offer our assistance in helping them navigate through thorny ethical dilemmas, unquote. One attendee was Kirk Hubbard, then the chief of operations for the CIA Operational Assessment Division. He would later leave the CIA to work for the private firm set up by James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen, the psychologists who were hired as private contractors to set up the CIA interrogation program, including the waterboarding of prisoners. In one 2003 email, Hubbard wrote to a top APA official, quote, "You won't get any feedback from Dr. James Mitchell or Jessen. They're doing special things to special people in special places and generally are not available," unquote. While the APA has attempted to distance itself from Mitchell and Jessen, the newly disclosed emails show the men attended a 2003 invite-only conference called The Science of Deception, sponsored by the APA, the CIA, and RAND Corporation to discuss so-called enhanced interrogations. We're joined now by two of the co-authors of the new report, All the President's Psychologists, the American Psychological Association's secret complicity with the White House and U.S. intelligence community in support of the CIA's enhanced interrogation program. Stephen Reisner is clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst. He's a founding member of the Coalition for an Ethical Psychology, an advisor on psychology and ethics for Physicians for Human Rights. He's currently a member of the APA Council of Representatives. Nathaniel Raymond is director of the Signal Program on Human Security and Technology at the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. We did invite a representative from the APA to join us as well, but they declined. Last year, the APA commissioned an outside attorney named David Hoffman to conduct a third-party independent review of the allegations about the APA and the Bush administration torture program. Rhea Farberman, the APA's executive director for public and member communications, told Democracy Now! The APA won't respond to the allegations in the All the President's Psychologists report until Hoffman's review is completed. Stephen Reisner and Nathaniel Raymond, welcome back to Democracy Now! Okay, Nathaniel Raymond, why don't you lay out the core findings in your 60-page report?
There are four core findings. The first is that the American Psychological Association allowed, as you mentioned, Dr. Susan Brandon, it appears, who 3 weeks before the APA engaged in its ethics process in 2005 on psychological ethics and national security, had been President Bush's behavioral science advisor. She wrote what appears to be research language in the Penn's report, the Psychological Ethics and National Security Policy of the APA. That language, we now know, because of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report, directly aligns with the legal memos authorizing the enhanced interrogation program and provided an ethical get-out-jail-free card that aligned with the then classified legal get-out-jail-free card. Secondly, we see clear deception by the APA, including some outright lies, including the assertion for many years that James Mitchell, the CIA torture psychologist you mentioned, had not been an APA member. We now know he was an APA member from 2001 to 2006, and the APA has also contended, according to Dr. Stephen Benke, the ethics director, that they had had no contact on interrogations and interrogation techniques with Mitchell and Jessen. We now know that they discussed sensory overload and the use of psychopharmacological agents with Mitchell and Jessen in 2003. The last two critical findings, Amy, are that the APA, as we see throughout the emails, expressed no concern about clear evidence of abuse that at that point, between 2004 and 2005, was public knowledge. And lastly, what we see in this report is a clear coordination that directly mirrors the timeline inside the Bush administration when Office of Medical Services personnel inside the CIA were raising concerns about human subjects research as part of the program. The APA, whether they knew it or not, allowed the administration to write a policy that basically helped put down that rebellion inside CIA.
How? By
allowing psychologists to play a critical monitoring and research role that was at the heart of the then newly authorized Bradbury Office of Legal Counsel memo. If psychologists couldn't ethically play this role, if the APA had not engaged in this policy, it is highly likely that the interrogation program itself would have disintegrated.
You ran Stephen Reisner for president of the American Psychological Association. Your main platform was speaking out against torture and APA's involvement with the Bush administration. You didn't win. Talk about what this means for the American Psychological Association.
Well, I think the issue is what this means for the entire profession of psychologists and the fact that we are represented by the American Psychological Association. Because I think that what we're finding is that psychologists are feeling betrayed by our association. What has happened is that the ethics code that we are all trained in, that we align ourselves with, and that gives us our identity as health professionals dedicated to the public good, that ethics code and ethics policy was twisted to align, not only to align with what the government needed it to do, but in the service of torture. It is a betrayal of what I think we all are expecting from and try to identify with from our association. So what has to happen right now is that we've got to, the membership, the council, any concerned American has to insist that we reclaim our association, put it back on an ethical track, and find a way to expose this, be accountable for it, be transparent about it, and make significant change so that we can restore trust.
We're going to go into detail on what the APA knew and when they knew it with Dr. Stephen Reisner and Nathaniel Raymond, co-authors of the new report, All the President's Psychologists, in a minute.